And it becomes conflicting because there's one aspect like now that I share about it more, right? But at the time you're like, well, I have this responsibility to like inspire and be that positive people, because a lot of people are going through a dark time, and I had positioned myself as someone that can be that positive spot for them, right? So it is hard when you're dealing with this all like behind the scenes. And
welcome to the It's Not That Deep podcast. I'm your host Deepak Sharma, and this week I sit down with Mallory Rowan. Mallory's super interesting because she is a power lifter, an entrepreneur, a marketer, an influencer, and so much more. But all titles aside, Mallory is just an amazing person with a really powerful story. As one of the co-founders of LVD Fitness, a lifestyle and apparel brand for athletes, Mal talks about her journey in fitness and business and how she was able to build up a 6-figure business that nearly killed her. We talk about how she was able to truly own her story of overcoming burnout to empower a community of people through her second business, MalMadeMeDoit, which consists of an online fitness program to make workouts accessible for anybody, at-home workouts, all kinds of workouts, and build a whole community for only $20 a month. As well as a business building component of helping entrepreneurs create a clear marketing strategy to implement without burning out. In addition to this, Mallory does one-on-one coaching. She's been a keynote speaker on numerous platforms. She's a Lululemon ambassador. I mean, I could sit here all day and just list off her accomplishments, but she's really just out here hustling without burnout, of course. If you're enjoying this kind of content, I'd ask you to please subscribe on any platform where you watch or listen to podcasts. Leave a rating, comment, share with all your friends and family. Or if you really want to put your money where your mouth is, for as little as a coffee a month, you could contribute to my Patreon page. Any little bit helps, and just remember, it's not that deep, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Mallory, thank you for coming on the It's Not That Deep podcast.
yeah, thanks for having me.
Really excited to have you here because you have a really unique story, and just seeing you on social media, all the things you're up to, I mean, it's hard to even give you one label. I mean, you're an entrepreneur, you're into fitness, you've built brands, you're a brand consultant. I mean, there's just so many different labels, but thank you for coming on today. I'm really excited to have you here.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
So let's start at the very beginning. Like, I want to hear the whole story because you have a really unique story and you talk about a lot of really important things that people really need to hear, and people are really going to benefit from hearing this. So let's talk about where are you born and raised? Like, let's talk like from the very beginning.
Like, from the womb.
Let's go from the very start. Like, I want to know everything.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Ottawa, youngest of 3 girls. So definitely like I did everything that both of my sisters did combined. So I was very busy growing up, which I think helped definitely give me a good work ethic. And I was super driven, just because I feel like it's a last born thing to do.
Yeah.
So I went to elementary right through high school here in Ottawa. And then I stayed here for university because I knew I wanted to study journalism,
Right.
which was kind of nice because why leave the city when the best journalism program is in Ottawa at Carleton.
Carleton has like one of the best in Canada.
Yeah, exactly. Which was nice too because I was obviously like carrying myself through school, so it would be cool to go away, but not going away was definitely like really helpful early years. Yeah.
Awesome. That's really cool. Talk to us about your uni experience a little bit. What was journalism like? What drew you to that? Talk to us about it.
Yeah, so I was really interested in journalism. I love like the behind the scenes of TV shows. Like I'd gone to a few different recordings, and I always loved like the broadcast side of journalism. And I really appreciated what the journalism program was because it was kind of like a college degree, but you got a university degree at the end of the day, which was cool. It was very hands-on. My journalism classes didn't have exams, right? We had real life assignments. We were writing for an actual paper.
So it's actually practical. You're actually getting out there in the field.
Exactly. So it'd be like write an article every week, and then we would have TV class, we would have radio class. And I always knew I was into business and marketing. And so it was a really clear choice for me because I got to learn all these multimedia skills that you don't really get from other programs. And so it was really, really fun. Like the program was really interesting. I always worked like through university too. So that was definitely something that was true to my story. I had like an office job going into first year.
Oh, yeah? What was that like?
It was good. Like, I think it's because I was used to being so busy. It was very natural for me. And I just knew that, you know, everyone has a university degree now. So I knew that getting into a working setting early was going to be beneficial.
How do I set myself apart? Yeah.
Exactly, right? And I think it was also just interest. I didn't really want to work at the mall or something. I wanted to work and explore my options and see what I wanted to do, right? So I got a marketing position, which was really cool to see like what I did and didn't like. And because of that first job, I picked up a minor in business, which obviously has helped get me to where we are today.
Yeah.
So yeah, I worked all through university. I started to work in the startup scene, which was really cool. Definitely had some good takeaways and some bad takeaways from that, like any experience. And I would say university definitely like put us where we are today.
That's awesome. I mean, it's powerful to hear that because, I mean, school isn't for everyone, but like you said, a lot of people are going to school and a lot of people kind of haven't figured out what they want to do, but they still go for the sake of going. But you kind of sound like you already had a little bit of a vision of what you liked, and then you built onto that with experiences, which is really cool. I like that.
Yeah, thank you.
So you seem to have a pretty high level of self-awareness. And so what I kind of wanted to talk to you about first, like starting off, was like you realized at one point, and this is just me making an assumption, correct me if I'm wrong, that the working for somebody particularly wasn't really for you. What was the transition between that and then starting your first business?
Yeah, so I think the startup community was really my transition period. I honestly think it helps that my first few jobs were very like corporate America, you know, old white male dominant. My sister always says it's like male, pale, and stale is a lot of corporate life. Yeah. So I worked at a lot of companies that were like that, a lot of cubicles, and it just didn't seem like how I wanted to live, especially being a student. And, you know, you would work full time during the summer and I would be in this air conditioned cubicle. And I was like, oh, I just want to be outside. Like, this is stressing me out. I feel like time is passing by and I'm not able to really enjoy it. And so I started to transition into the startup community. I worked with a company that was an Invest Ottawa portfolio company.
Cool.
And it was really fun. I like took a chance on it. I actually turned down another summer at my like decent paying job to do an unpaid internship for this startup because it just felt right for me. And it was really fun. It was like 20 dudes that were like 28. There was maybe one other girl. Like, it was very classic startup environment, you know, Nerf guns, all that.
That's cool.
But it was fun, and it started to give me a taste of what can happen when you actually have the power to influence and the power to actually do things. Because in corporate, so many times you have these great ideas, but you're the youngest seat at the table, or there's just so much behind the scenes politics that getting an idea approved can be really difficult. But in this startup zone, I was just able to run with everything, right? I was the voice of marketing. I was able to try things, really speak up. So I think that was a really cool experience that definitely opened my eyes to what I could do. And then it wasn't until we came up with our business idea that I really saw myself as a potential entrepreneur. I always thought I would be like a key player in one of those companies, but I honestly never thought that I was going to start my own thing.
And take the plunge.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk like from idea to actually making it happen, because this is the stuff people want to hear. This is what they want to know. Everyone has an idea or something, but you acted on it and built a pretty successful brand. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, so I mentioned I picked up that minor in business, and it was super impactful because it was in an entrepreneurship class that I actually started the idea of our first business. And Carleton's really great for that. They're really encouraging entrepreneurship, which I love to see going forward. Because like I said, I work for myself because that class existed, right? So my first entrepreneurship class, we did a group project. You know, I was kind of with the randoms because we were the non-commerce students. So we put together a group and we made this product, and it was like a toothbrush that had like floss in it and just some gimmicky thing. And we had to do all this work and presentations around it. And it just felt kind of like a waste of my time, right? Because I knew it wasn't something I was passionate about. So the next year I had another course, and they were really encouraging us to do businesses we wanted to pursue.
Okay.
Yeah. And I had recently started powerlifting. And as a woman in the gym, like I'd been lifting in the gym for a while, and it's just such a male dominant area. So it can be really intimidating for women. Yeah, for a lot of reasons. I always tell women like, yeah, they might be staring at you, but it's probably just literally because it's like, ooh, a woman, you know?
Yeah.
But as women, we're just like, oh my God, like, am I doing this exercise wrong? Like, is something weird? Like, are my pants see-through? You know, your mind just starts going.
And then a million other things too, like, what does this guy want? Like, what
exactly. What is this going to be? So, yeah, it started, I wanted to do something for women in powerlifting, but I wasn't a personal trainer by any means. So I had that initial idea, and then I started talking to my partner, Josh, who actually was just my training partner at the time. And, you know, I was talking to him about this idea, and we were trying to find like holes to fill in the powerlifting community because it was a really changing community for what it looked like to be a powerlifter. It went from a lot of what everyone pictures of like bald, beard, tattooed, like
big, bulky, strong
exactly.
men. Just
Yeah, to people like us, right? You know, Josh is like a 74 kilo Filipino powerlifter at the time, right? I'm just like a classic blonde white girl. Like it's not what people expect. So we really wanted to service this new part of the community. And we had a few different ideas. We wanted to do, you know, a subscription box with protein. And then we wanted to do a special shirt to help grip on the bar for squats. And we were just like, you know what, we're broke students. These ideas sound really intimidating. And like they take a lot of money to figure out.
Super expensive. That's what I was going to say. Like, like everyone has these ideas like, yeah, dude, let's do this, and this. But we're broke students. I love it.
So, which for some people works great, right? They lean into that, they get investments, but we were definitely a little intimidated by that side. And we said, you know, why don't we start with something like a lifestyle brand that we can actually relate to? And then, you know, all of these options are possible after once people get to know us. So that's really where it started. And we decided to be that lifestyle business for the powerlifting community. And on top of it, we wanted to bring kind of that tentree aspect that a lot of people are familiar with, the socially conscious model to fitness, because we saw a lot of people wearing tentree in the gym, which it wasn't really designed for. And we found that a lot of athletes have those same values if they want to have an impact, but they're so busy, right? With training, like with powerlifting, we were in the gym 3 hours at a time. So we wanted to make it easy. Like if you're going to buy apparel anyways, why not have that apparel have the impact? So we partnered with WaterAid Canada, and then every item we sold, we provided 1 month of clean water to someone in a developing country.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
How do you go about finding that relationship, that partnership?
Yeah, so we decided we for sure wanted to do water because as athletes, you know, water is part of everything we do. It's like during your workouts, it's your protein shakes, right? It's what really keeps you going. And it's so crazy that that's not something everyone has access to. So we started looking at water and we started researching different organizations, which can be really intimidating, right? Because at the end of the day, you're just trying to do something good. But with charities or not-for-profits, there can be a lot of like, you know, where's the money actually going? So we had found a few that we liked, and then we landed on this one, and they just had like really powerful branding, which we appreciated from where we were coming from.
Exactly.
And then they were from Ottawa, which was really cool. Yeah. So their Canadian chapter was based out of Ottawa, and we kind of took that as a sign, and we reached out to them, and we just kind of said, you know, we're 2 students. We want to make a difference. And so we met with their VP of marketing. And I remember in the marketing meeting, like we were so intimidated because she was like, you know, so many people come in and they think they can just like make a small donation and that makes their company like different. And we were like, oh shit, like we're about to get rejected for like trying to give them a donation, right? And she was like, you know, I can tell you guys are just really genuine people and passionate about this, and we would love to partner with you, which was really cool because at the time, like she pulled up our website, it was just a landing page collecting emails. So they definitely took a chance on us, right? Because at the end of the day, they're a large organization with a brand. So even though you're just trying to donate some money, it does have impact. So yeah, it was really cool. Like we just reached out, and just being authentic and saying, this is what we want to do was really powerful for us.
That is super powerful because, I mean, we kind of take it for granted that water just comes out of a tap and we could take our showers and flush the toilet and do whatever we want. But then there's places around the world where you got to walk so far to even get a chance at getting clean water. It's kind of removed from us.
Yeah, 100%.
Especially as Canadians, where we have like most of the fresh water in the world.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Like I don't even think about it a lot. I'm completely in the camp where it's like, whatever, but it humbles you a lot. And I like that. I like that initiative a lot. So then talk to us about the brand that you actually built a little bit. What does it stand for? And then how do you go from there? Now that you've got some roots and a little bit of momentum going, what's the next step?
Yeah, so it's called LVD Fitness, and it stands for Lift, Visualize, Dominate. And we started with 100 t-shirts. And before we made a full website or anything, we just said, we should be able to sell these 100 t-shirts to our local powerlifting community. And if we can't, we need to go back to the drawing board, right? So it was a good way to validate it. And before that, we put about 3 months into the brand image itself. So we actually worked with designers, and it was something that we invested in right from the start because we knew we didn't want to be another fitness company with a barbell logo. And we knew that for a lifestyle brand, the logo would be so much of it, right?
Right.
So we really invested in that. And then we did those 100 t-shirts and they sold really quickly. And then we had a wait list. So we decided, okay, this is a good idea. We made our Shopify website. We were going to pay designers to do our website. And then the night before, we were just playing in Shopify, with the free templates.
Yeah.
Totally built stuff on our own.
It's pretty easy.
Yeah, you'd be surprised.
A lot of people don't realize is you can watch a YouTube video on how to make a Shopify website and just do it.
Yeah, and it's surprisingly user-friendly and just intuitive. So I always recommend to people to try doing it on their own or with a friend that's maybe a bit more tech-savvy than them, because that was our website for probably 2 years, right, with some tweaks here and there. We built our website, and the power of social media, right? Even back then, we had global sales our first day of our website just because we had Instagram friends that were around the world. So that was really cool, powerlifters supporting us in different areas. And I think for us, it was a really big timing play. So it was all about timing and authenticity. People could tell we were actually part of the community and we were just like them.
Yeah.
And I think that was really powerful.
You weren't just trying to ride a powerlifting wave. You're like, no, I'm out here. I'm doing this 3 hours a day. We really do this.
Yeah. And especially for women in powerlifting, it was a time where that was really growing. The early days before me, there would be maybe 1 or 2 at a competition. And my first meet, there was about 20 of us and we were all in university, all doing our first meet. So it was definitely a time where women in powerlifting was growing too. And I think people really liked that it was not only myself, but we were showcasing a lot of women with our photo shoots. We always used actual customers, right? So people like that.
I saw that on your website.
Yeah.
It's really cool that the actual testimonials, and then you see the people wearing the hats.
Totally.
Okay, these are powerlifters.
Yeah. And again, it's people always think that it's such a big endeavor to start a business, but you can hack it in so many ways that can end up being great. People loved that we used real people as models, and it was just because we weren't going to pay anyone
model. Yeah, I get it completely.
Yeah, we just posted on Instagram hey, anyone want to be in this shoot? So it ended up being a lot of our customers, which obviously we loved. We love showcasing different bodies of all types.
Yeah.
But it's funny, it really just came from of course we're not going to pay real models. That would be crazy right now. Yeah. I
like my biggest takeaway from this is the community that you're building and investing in, and they're then investing in you, and they're happy to, because you, like I said before, you really are doing this, and then, hey, want to buy this t-shirt or want to buy this hat. So where does it go from there? You got a few t-shirts now, you got the logo, you got everything. What's the next step? How do we take it to the next level?
Yeah, for us, one of the big things we did was event sponsorship. So actually showing up in person was a really big play for us. We spent almost every weekend at events, actually getting to know people. I think that really helped because when you're really transparent about your business, especially small businesses starting out, people actually want you to win. So whether they knew us personally or they'd met us once, they became really invested in what we were doing because it was good for the community, the larger community, the powerlifting community, and to see people like them actually doing something, right? As you said, a lot of people want to start a business. So it's cool when you actually see people, you get to meet them, and then you feel like you know them, right? So you want them to succeed because it means that you could succeed too. So I think that was really big for us. And then from there, it was just honestly very small changes and testing things, right? We would release a t-shirt and then we would release 4 items at once. And then we started doing full collections, and then we would theme the collections, and then we would do better marketing campaigns around those collections. So really just learning off each experience, and then getting major athletes on board because we had really supportive athletes early on. We had the best male powerlifter in the world and the best female powerlifter in the world sign as athletes within our first year, which was really crazy, and in another industry you could not do, because they were willing to just come on board and help spread the message. And we didn't have like a budget to take on athletes at that point.
That was going to be my next question,
yeah.
because so are you just sending out a DM or an email to these people? Do you already know them? How do you get these people to get on board?
Yeah, so it's a mix of both. When you're in the community, it's a lot easier, right, to get connected. And people just liked seeing that we were doing something for the community. So a lot of them actually were seeking us out.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
For Ray Williams, he's the male powerlifter that we had, and he squats like over 1,000 pounds.
Jeez.
He's a whole other level. He followed us on Instagram.
Nice.
And it was just this moment of like, holy shit, Ray just followed us. So we sent him a DM. We got on Skype, and then he was just really down because he really liked the social aspect that we had.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a great story.
Yeah, it was super cool. And then for the female, her name's Jen Thompson. She benches like 320 pounds.
Jeez.
Yeah, at like 130 pounds.
What?
Yeah.
That's
so
ridiculous.
she's insane. Same kind of thing. We met her at an event, getting out in that community. We were just helping out at this event. So they asked us to drive around, her and another athlete, Kim Walford, who is another incredible athlete. We just got to know them on a personal level, and we left that weekend thinking, wouldn't it be crazy if one day Jen Thompson was our athlete? And I kid you not, like 5 days later, she messaged me on Facebook and was like, I would love to help you guys grow this. She's like, I'm in a very comfortable position in my life, right? Like, I'm not looking for big paid sponsorships, but I want to see you guys win, and I want to get you out of your corporate jobs. And I think we can do this. So it was really cool to have those people like just dig in with us early on.
Almost co-sign you.
Exactly.
I love that. This is an incredible story. You mentioned you still had your corporate jobs at that time. Mm-hmm. How did you balance all this, trying to be all in on a business? This is, your passion at the time. This is what you want to be doing. Yeah. But you're still in school. Yeah. You're still trying to get your powerlifting in.
Yeah, competing at nationals and all that.
You've still got to eat, have a semblance of a social life. Yeah. And all that while still keeping a job. How did you do it?
I look back on it, and I honestly think it's just like young and dumb. You can just power through anything at a certain age. So I always encourage people when they're young to just go for it, because literally we're like, I don't know how we did that.
You're never going to have that much energy again in your life.
Exactly.
So do it then.
But yeah, I think everything kind of came into play. Like, definitely the social life took the first hit, but that was the cool thing, because what we were building was so community oriented. It was just that our social life changed, right? We would go to Toronto on the weekend for a powerlifting meet, and we might not be going out with our friends in Ottawa, but we've now met all these new friends, and then we go to dinner with them. So it just really evolved from there. And I think having the corporate jobs was also a really great push, where it was a constant reminder of where you don't want to be. Right. So it really just fueled you to go home. And
I like that. That's really powerful, actually. Like, because a lot of people in that position might just take that negativity, that dread that I gotta go into the office. I hate my life. I hate this. But you kind of flip that around and like, nah, I'm here, and this is gonna fuel me to get out of here.
Totally.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people too, they get in this mindset of, just quit your job and go for it. I've given a lot of people advice to stay at their job like another 4 months or 8 months or whatever their situation is, because I also think you can use it to your advantage, right? When you know that you have something else, it makes it more bearable, even if you're not enjoying it. And you have to think of what it allows you to do. So I was lucky that, my work was paying for my phone. So that was one expense I didn't have to pay. It allowed me to travel a lot. So I would definitely take advantage of that. And I remember many times going to places where I would take like a $40 Uber or whatever to go to a powerlifting gym that was near where I was in the States. And I really just, every trip I had, I was like, how can I make this work for LVD? We had trips where, my flight was covered in the hotel. So we would buy Josh a flight ticket, and we would go and we would rent a car, and we would go to all the gyms in that area. So I always think there's ways that you can make your day job work for you.
That's true.
Even if it's more than, you're just doing it to pay the bills, there's actually a lot more opportunities usually.
That's really powerful. I'm kind of in that position personally where like, I've got the 9 to 5 and sometimes, I can be quite negative about it in just how I go about my day to day. But then I do have to sometimes take a step back and think, well, wait, this is allowing me to do all this.
Totally.
And do all these other things, and nothing's permanent. So,
yeah.
you know, it could be a lot worse.
Yeah, and I think it's almost silly sometimes when we think we're not in control, right? Like, oh, I have to go to work. It's like, well, you're still choosing to go to work, and you have a job, right? There's a lot of people right now that would probably love the job that you have,
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, yeah. It's just such a weird, like, it's not selfish, but it's like you're thinking about your situation right now and projecting it way longer into the future than it might actually be. Right. So you're like, I'm here now, I'm going to continue to be here, but that's not necessarily true, as you know, because things evolved pretty quickly with your business, right? Talk to me about how you went from starting to get some of the athletes, starting to generate a bit of a buzz, it's starting to now pick up steam really, to becoming a 6-figure brand. Yeah,
so I mean, it's hard. Like, I think everyone wants us to pinpoint it to a moment, but it's so gradual, right? And I think it's just figuring things out along the way. And, you know, you do one thing and test it, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. And then you ask yourself how you could do that better. And I think it was just a lot of iterations of that. And for us, you know, the power of social, right? We were so connected to our audience and our community that we could even be debating 2 designs we want to release, or, you know, 5 colors of water bottles, and we can throw them up.
Yeah, I love that.
Exactly. And you can do a post and say, what do you guys want to see next? And people will tell you, right? And the biggest thing with that is don't ask and then don't do it, right? So we would ask and then we would come through. And I think it made people feel really heard, right? You know, we made shirts that looked cool under your singlets because there were certain requirements for those shirts to get approved. So, you know, we went out and we got our shirts approved, and we made cool designs, and then we made every color on the planet for people that they wanted, because, you know, some people really want to compete in all orange and they couldn't do that. So it was the small things, right? And listening to that community on a wider scale. So yeah, I think one of the moments that really stands out for us is one night we were actually driving to an event that was, I think, 7 hours away. It was like Saguenay, Quebec, which is like super far. It's past Quebec City, and it was the middle of winter. We were driving, and I was on my phone, and we just started getting these Shopify orders. And I was like, Josh, I think like we're getting like spammed or something, because it was all Japanese names.
Okay.
And I was like, I don't know what's happening, but they're all ordering like $250 to $300 worth of stuff.
Jeez.
And it was like a Monday night. And I was like, what is happening? And I messaged one of our friends who also had a business in powerlifting, and I knew they had like an Asia side to their business. And so I asked him, I'm like, have you guys had anything like this happen? Like, I don't know if we should send the orders. Like, it just seemed really weird, right? Like, they just kept coming through. And they were like, no, like, in a lot of the Asian cultures, they just go hard. So it means like they've come across your business and like a friend told a friend. And that's honestly what it was. It was like somebody just picked it up and they were just going for it. Like all in one night, all of a sudden we were like literally big in Japan.
I love that. Yeah. That's so random.
Yeah, so random.
You never figured out exactly what it was? Was there like a event or something?
Well, it turns out they actually are like, what we decided was they're really big fans of Ray Williams, one of the athletes that we had on board, which is hilarious. He's like a giant black man. And so for the Japanese lifters, he's like the total opposite. And they just loved it. And we had actually done like a specific collaboration shirt with him. And it was around that time. And it just really picked up. And
it's crazy that something like that can work. Like that experimentation, like you said before, testing new things. Like you probably wouldn't have really done that. But you're like, you know what? Let's do this little specific collab. And that's what. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, and then for, you know, a year later or so, one of our Ray Williams collabs was actually a Japanese shirt. So, you know, you learn from each thing on how to cater the market. And we were really lucky. The World Championships last year was in Calgary. So we went and we actually got to meet some of our Japanese fans, which was really cool experience. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Coming full circle like
exactly, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. I really like what you guys were able to do with this business. And, you know, it's so much more than that. Like you talk about it being a lifestyle brand and empowering not only women, but people in powerlifting, like the new generation. Let's take it back a little bit and talk to me. Why did you get into powerlifting? What was it about powerlifting that, you know, like you say, a white blonde girl, small white blonde girl gets into powerlifting? What was it?
Yeah, so I grew up in competitive dance, right? So I mentioned like doing everything my sisters did. So, I had one sister that did certain styles and the other sister did others. So I did all of them, right? And I was always in dance. And when I got older, I actually moved into pole fitness because it was, similar to dance, but it was a different challenge.
Right.
So when I was doing pole fitness, I started going to the gym. And part of that was knowing that because I danced so intensely for so long that I would just literally get fat if I stopped all that movement, right?
Okay.
Like it's a lot of exercise you're doing.
Yeah.
To go to university and just stop seemed like a really bad idea. So I started doing pole fitness and then I was going to the gym to support it because it's a lot of strength stuff. And then in the gym, like I just kept getting asked if I was a power lifter. And so it used to actually be a bit of a trigger word for me. Like I really hated it because I had that same idea that a lot of other people have, right? These big, bulky people. I thought it meant like they were judging, my body because I had bigger legs from dance. Like
Okay.
I always thought it was a comment on that, but it would actually be because I was squatting like 250 pounds or something at the time, right? So yeah, I would squat pretty heavy. I would deadlift pretty heavy, just because my legs were strong from dance. And then, enough people kept asking me that finally, it was actually my partner, Josh, who was trying to get me to join the powerlifting team at Carleton. And it was, a little biased on his part because they wanted more women on the team. And they said I could use the varsity gym. So I was like, okay, that sounds like a good deal. I guess I'll powerlift.
Win-win.
Yeah. So I started benching because I was not bench pressing at the time. And I remember going to the tryout and being so nervous and so intimidated. There was, one other woman, everyone else was dudes. And the woman was already familiar with the team because she'd been training with them. So, it was like immediately like the same way we do with like Nikki and Cardi, it was like, oh, there's two of us. I guess like it's going to be me or her instead of both of us. Right. So I was really intimidated. I remember like my bench sucked. Like I was failing the bench and they were like, oh, it's the bar. Like because my squat and my deadlift were so strong. They were like, oh, it must not be that she just doesn't train chest, but that's what it was. But yeah, so I joined the team and then they said, like, psych, you actually have to do a meet when you join the team. So I did at Seneca College. They do a college and university meet, which was really cool because everybody, as I mentioned, was in the same boat. Like none of the women had competed before. It was kind of a shit show from all angles. But at least you weren't alone in your own shit show, right? Yeah, and I did my first meet and I just really loved it. And I loved the idea of focusing on like what your body can do in the gym. And I found when you shifted from thinking about, the scale or like how you look in the mirror, which that's a lot of the reasons we go to the gym, right? You start focusing on what your body can do and then you start seeing these great results in those areas when you're not even focusing on them, which I think is really cool. We have this idea that we're going to look like men if we start training weights. And I think like
big misconception,
huge, like,
and to this day, like I would think like in 2019, it would kind of been faded away by now that like, oh, if you lift weights, you're going to get bulky and all vascular and like gross looking. Like, no, that's like so false.
Yeah. So it's good. Like people are coming along, but yeah, for me, it was just like, it felt really great. It was something I could really measure. You go do, say, like a class or you run on the treadmill. It's really hard to see those results. But when you're tracking something like your dumbbell shoulder press week to week and it's going up 5 pounds every week, like that's really exciting, right? So I found it was really easy to stay on track. I liked having those goals. And it was just a really cool way to kind of test my limits.
How many times a week were you like practicing or training? And was it like in groups? Were you doing it with people or was it like off on your own?
Yeah, so it was a bit of both. Like, at Good Life, I had certain powerlifters I would train with. Sometimes I would train at the Carleton gym with the team. And then sometimes, you'd do a morning session before work all by yourself and you'd ask the stranger for the lift off at the bench. And it was a little bit of everything. So I think I was usually training when I was peaking around like 4 to 5 times a week. Okay. The 5th or 6th would often be like cardio though, just going in for that. But yeah, usually 4 times of the longer sessions, which would be anywhere from like 2 to 3 hours, which is intense either way, but it's important to keep in mind you're not lifting that whole time, right? Part of the reason it takes so long is because when you're so close to your maximum, you're resting a lot. Yeah,
but the weight is also a lot more and you're doing a lot lower reps and stuff like that. People would, understandably though, be quite intimidated by that. If they walked into the gym right now and they saw you putting up,
Yeah.
loading up this bar, it almost like might defeat some people. They might think, "Oh, I'll never be able to do that." So
Right.
what would your advice be to somebody who wants to get started into something like this and want to get into it, but
Yeah.
like how do you start?
Well, I would say there's two parts to that. Like, one is just start, right? You have to have that. It's like any success you see, right? Like Jeff Bezos with Amazon, he didn't just start with Amazon, right? Like, there was a first step there. And I think you just have to realize that everyone started somewhere and that everyone starts at different places, right? There's athletes in powerlifting that are killing it, and they were former football players, and they really have a leg up, right? Because they were, one, football players, they went through a lot, but two, like with football, you're training in the gym, right? You're doing, the deadlifts or the bench, whereas other sports, you're not necessarily doing that.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is to talk to people like that. Like, if you see someone that's pushing weight that really intimidates you in the gym, like, don't be afraid to go talk to them, because it's like, I would say 9 times out of 10, that person is not going to be annoyed if you're saying, "Hey, I'd like to do what you're doing one day. How do I get there?" I think everyone's comfortable with someone approaching them with that question.
That's very true. And I think people are a lot more open than, it's a scary thing though. And I don't know why it is. The gym is just an intimidating place for people. And you see some things like, I would guess, changing it a little bit. You see Movati, there's a women's only section. So let's say you're starting off and you're a little bit intimidated of just going into the co-ed area, these big bulky dudes grunting and whatnot. You can start there and then, do other things as well. And like, there's all kinds of classes, and there's so many ways to get fit these days. So I think that's cool. It's changing.
Yeah. And I think it's like anything, everyone's had one bad experience, and we just usually really let that scar us, right? Like, I have like a membership program, and, I've had members tell me like some pretty horrible things where someone was just really rude to them at the gym. And I think because it's this space where we're already insecure, the second something like that happens, it just really causes you to, retract.
It can put you in a dark place.
Exactly. Yeah. But I love seeing people, cross those lines. Like, I've had guys at Good Life ask me for tips on their bench, and I think that's like a really cool thing for them to be able to do, because I understand that still in 2019, like, most people aren't going to ask the woman in the gym for advice on bench. But those are the smart guys, because I can give them really great advice compared to the random bro beside me, right? So
the random bro who has no idea what he's doing.
Yeah.
That's great. Let's talk about MalMadeMeDoit.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I started a group fitness program online, and it was actually after I stopped competing in powerlifting. So after I stopped competing, which we can talk about after too, I was, just having some fun in the gym. And then it got to that point where you're like, okay, well, it was fun not following a program, but now I'm just a little like missing those goals. I'm missing, watching that success each week. So I decided to put together a group, and I did a free 6-week program. And it was honestly mostly to keep myself accountable to other people. And I wanted to just open it up to anyone who wanted to be accountable at the gym. And so, we wrote a 6-week program and put a Facebook group together, and it was a really, really cool like community experience. A lot of what we talked about, right? Like, women and men who are uncomfortable in the gym for different reasons. And they were able to, start to get comfortable, whether it was because they didn't know what kind of programming to do. They didn't know what exercises should look like. So we included video demos. We coached them a bit on different aspects like nutrition and sleep, and how to make sure you're taking a holistic approach. And then I decided to turn it into a real thing. And I'm really passionate about making fitness accessible to everyone, whether that's making them feel comfortable or being able to afford it. So I put it together. It's $20 a month. I always say it's like if you cut back on Starbucks a little bit, that's all that it takes. And they can either do gym workouts or at-home workouts, because I know for a lot of people, even just going to the gym is intimidating. So if we can get them started at home, at least they're moving. Even if they just stay with the at-home workouts, they're still moving 3 to 4 times a week.
And you could do a lot at home.
Totally.
You could do a ridiculous amount of working out, like with a chair and a couple dumbbells and a band.
Yeah. And that was one of the cool things we did, because a lot of people with at-home programs get intimidated the second it says to go buy dumbbells, right? So we actually have like a no equipment program.
Great,
and we use things like a towel that you can mimic like lat pull downs. We use steps. We use a stair. We use like grab anything that's around like 1 liter jug.
Yeah.
So we really try to make it accessible for, you know, the ones who are doing it while their toddler's napping, or, you know, a student that doesn't have much space in their apartment or can't even afford maybe a couple dumbbells.
Yeah. Because to that point, you could do thousands of body weight exercises alone.
Totally.
Like your own body is equipment.
Exactly.
Right,
yeah.
That's powerful. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And so this initial Facebook group, you put it together. You don't really know what's going to come about it, but you're also doing it for yourself, for the accountability component, which a lot of people don't realize is like 95% of the equation.
Exactly.
Like if you're not accountable towards yourself, if you're not at some level tracking your progress or having some kind of structure to a program, no one, it doesn't matter what kind of like motivational videos or whatever you watch
YouTube
out there.
video can save you.
No, you're lost. You don't have, you're swimming in the ocean with no direction to swim in. So
Totally.
I really like this. This is really cool. And for only $20, like, fire me up. Like I might have to sign up, you know,
exactly.
this is hype. So then, you know, you start this Facebook group. How many people join? What's the initial reception? And like, how are you now dealing with these incoming people? Is it personalized? How are you dealing with it?
Yeah. So the initial group, I think, in the Facebook group, we have around like 300 members. I had a lot of people that don't use Facebook. So we had over 500. It was like 500 to 700 people for that first challenge. Obviously, I can't say how many stuck with it because I'm not in their gym with them. But that was really cool to see. It definitely validated that there was a need for it, right? And it comes back to that first 100 t-shirts idea, like just testing something and validating it. I was just emailing out Google spreadsheets, very like low cost, like basically no cost, using the Facebook group. And it was really cool. As you said, the accountability piece was huge. People liked like feeling like the group was keeping them accountable. People would post their wins, but they would also post things like, you know, my son has a hockey tournament this weekend and I haven't gotten the workout in yet, but like I'm posting this to make sure that I do.
That's great.
Yeah, it was cool. It was like I didn't have to, you know, be the person calling people out. And it shows how, like you said, we do need that accountability. And I think we're so ready to give it to ourselves, but we hold back. So, you know, they're volunteering that information in the group. So yeah, I took it from there. I turned it into like an actual platform with lots of videos to coach people through, and so that they would actually understand what each phase of the program was designed to do, why they were doing certain elements of it. And it's really cool. Now we've divided it. Like I said, we have the at home and the gym, but the gym we've even divided into 2 streams, and one is strength and one we call power building, which is just, you know, working out. You'll probably lean out a little, get a little stronger, that nice balance that a lot of people want. And then the other stream is for those strength inspired ones. Some people are really enjoying like the squats or the bench in the power building, and they want to do more of a strength focus on that. So it's an option for people that want to get into powerlifting too.
That's really cool because you're not really a personal trainer.
No.
But this is almost even smarter, and this is why I kind of admire you, because like this is so much more scalable.
Yeah, and
you could definitely go become a PT and start changing people's lives individually, but there's the time constraint. You're only going to be able to deal with one person or a few people at a time. With this, like you can, in theory, have unlimited clients. Yeah,
and what I really like to emphasize too is for people to integrate fitness in a healthy way, right? Because I think a lot of us, people will pick up bodybuilding or powerlifting and they get really intense with it, right? And then we start to identify with it. And then what happens when you have that injury and you're no longer a powerlifter, right? That was something I really struggled with, owning a business in powerlifting. It was really hard for me to admit for a long time that I wasn't competing. I just told people I was competing later in the year, you know?
100%.
So helping people get out of that mindset. And we've created the workouts in a way that, you know, for the gym ones, they're 4 to 5 days a week. But we actually built them in a priority system that if you can only do 2 days a week, just keep doing 1 and 2 and you'll still see progress, right? So we made it that the workouts throughout the week can kind of drop off. And we did the same thing with each workout. Like, each workout starts with the most important pieces. So if you get that work call halfway through your workout and you have to leave, you know you've done like the best part that you could do for yourself.
That's really good.
Yeah, so that's what...
Because life happens.
Exactly. Yeah. And I want people to understand that. One of my friends, he's a nutrition coach, and he posted a really great quote, and it was like, you know, throwing your whole diet out the window because you ate 1 donut is like cutting off your arm because you got a splinter, right? Like everybody does it. We just feel so bad when we miss 2 workouts that we stop working out. It's like, no, you don't have to do that. You can, you know, remain consistent or pick something that works for you. You know, if you're not going to the gym and you go to the gym once a week next year, that's 52 times that you didn't go this year that you've now added. Like, that's a huge increase.
Yeah.
But we think we need to like start going 6 days a week, right?
Yeah. It comes back to how people are thinking so short term, and,
Exactly.
and today means forever.
Yeah.
And, you know, if I had a cheat meal on Saturday, I'll start Monday again.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you had a cheat meal. Don't make it a cheat weekend. You know
And then
what I'm
people
saying?
eat everything on Sunday because it becomes a free second cheat day, right?
It's that negative feedback loop almost that like you feel like, I don't know like the psychology behind it, but it's like you feel like you lost. You're defeated on this
You've let yourself
journey.
down, yeah.
But it's not linear. It's so up and down and things are going to happen. But as long as it's trending towards a good direction, we're all winning.
Exactly.
How do the people prove to you that they're being accountable? Are they sending selfies? Are they filling out something workout complete? I may have missed it when you were talking about it, but how do they...
Yeah, so like I said, because I'm trying to focus on the sustainability for like themselves, they actually don't have to do anything, and that's part of it. Is like it's on you.
So Mal doesn't make me do it.
No, exactly. It's like a plot twist.
Yeah, that's great. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So I want people to get to that place where they're accountable to themselves and they're forgiving. You know, not even using words like cheat day, right?
Great.
It's just having the meal.
Yeah.
Because it's your meal that night.
It's
right?
not that deep.
It's not that deep. Exactly. We have a very obvious collaboration.
I like this.
Yeah. But yeah, like. What I do is I provide them with tools to keep themselves accountable, right? So we put the workout in a format where, you know, I give them a spreadsheet and I say, okay, you're going to do this many reps and this many sets. And then there's a place for them to actually track their weight that they're lifting. And there's notes that say like, this should feel like a 7 out of 10. And the next week it's like, this should feel like an 8 out of 10. So even just having that spreadsheet to track their weights that they're lifting has been really huge. I had one woman that got into it because her daughter was doing the program and she started doing the program, and she wrote this beautiful note in the Facebook group even about how it was the first time in her life she stopped focusing about the scale, and she was just really loving writing down those weights each week, and she was so excited to see her strength go up that much. And
it feels so good.
Yeah, and she was like, I totally would have quit earlier on if I wasn't tracking that, because you don't feel the progress right away with your body, right? So I do stuff like that, and I have, I call it a wellness tracker that I provide them, and it's basically just a document, and I said, you know, you don't have to track any of these things, but if you want to, here are some tools to do it. So I show them how to do good progress photos, right? Like things like taking it the same day of the week, wearing the same outfit, those small details that can help people. Then I give them like a food diary, which I say like, this is not to overanalyze, right? It's if it's important to you to keep yourself on track, feeling healthy, or if some people are trying to identify foods that maybe don't make them feel good, they can track things like what foods they're eating at the same time of like the quality of their sleep, their happiness, their stress. So I give them trackers like that too, right? Like, how happy are you feeling? What's making you happy?
So
how
it really
stressed?
is the holistic approach.
Exactly.
It's not just like, all right, guys, here's how to lose 20 pounds in 3 weeks. Fit in that wedding dress.
Exactly.
No, this is a lot more like, how is this making you feel?
Yeah.
Being kind of more in tune and mindful.
Yeah,
I like that.
I think whatever gets you into it, right? You mentioned the wedding thing. I had a lot of people this summer that were doing it for their wedding, and then they kept up with it because they just felt good, right? So it doesn't matter if that's the reason you're getting into it, as long as we take that and develop that natural, like, healthy relationship, right? I'm not giving people these like 6 trackers and being like, hey, I need you to track all these things, because that's not a healthy relationship and it's not sustainable.
It can get overwhelming too.
Exactly.
Especially in a world where we can measure almost everything and anything, to like down to like the circumference of your arm. and like, you know, how your waist
to your sleep
today. like you are not getting enough rest today. Like, it can almost be too much. It's kind of sometimes better to just, hey, here's the intensity of the exercise.
Exactly.
It's an 8 this week. All right.
Yeah. And showing people, you know, it's not always linear. Like we talked about, like I'll have workouts where I'm going up every week. And then one week I'm like, you know what, these weights are going to be way lower this week because I have XYZ happening. And you have to acknowledge that, right?
Oh, we all have those days too where, like, I mean, there's been days even in the last couple of weeks where, you know, I was a little under the weather and sick and not feeling well at all, but forced myself to go to the gym. And I'm like, look, today's not about lifting an amazing amount of weight and getting
Yeah.
a great pump and feeling fantastic. I'm literally just here to move my body.
Sweat out the cold or whatever it might be.
Exactly. And like the workout sucked.
Yeah.
I've hated it. I hated every minute of it. And you know when like even other bad things, I forgot my headphones.
Yeah,
I'm just there just like, this just sucks. But you get through it and you feel better after. And was it the best workout? No, but it was still a workout. It still did something.
Yeah.
And that's not to say you have to go to the gym. I could have stayed here and just done some push-ups or something. Like, I love this. This is great.
Yeah.
This is fantastic. You're really in tune and really self-aware about how things make you feel and stuff. Let's now talk about when things got a little bit out of control for you. There's a period in your life, and I love that you shared this story. I think I commented on it on your Instagram, and you were sharing in candid detail experiencing burnout and how building this business and, you know, subscribing to the hustle mantra took over your life. And let's talk about it. Like this is a great topic.
Yeah. So I mentioned, you know, briefly how I stopped competing in powerlifting and how that was a really hard time for me. So, you know, Josh and I had been traveling a lot. We were at Eastern Regional Championships. We had a great time. And then we were training. We stayed a little bit longer because my mom's family is from Nova Scotia. So we went to visit family. We were like, okay, we have to get our workouts in though, right? So we went to Acadia. We were training at that gym, and I just felt horrible. And like my body does not do well with travel. Like it feels fine until you then go try and powerlift. So it was something that was really hard for me too, because I didn't know. I don't get off planes and feel sore, but it wasn't until I tried to do workouts after where I'm like, oh, this actually isn't great. So, you know, we were in the gym and I was not having a great workout. And this was after, you know, the brand had grown a lot and our personal following and audience had grown a lot because of it. And so there was a lot of pressure around it, right? I had grown because I was a female powerlifter and I was strong and people really loved that about me. And then I was getting to this point where it was like my body was really fighting it. And I was warming up for my squats and like I just broke down. Like I started crying in like the Acadia dungeon, which is like the hardcore. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's like the hardcore like varsity gym. Like it's just such like a dirty, grungy thing. And, you know, 10 minutes later, the football team came in, but I was just like, started bawling. And I told Josh, I was like, I don't even want to do provincials because that's what was coming up and I was prepping for. And I was like, I just feel like I have to do it. And it was a really tough point because I was like, I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for the Instagram post, right? I'm doing it because I know that like me doing this is inspiring other people to do it. So it was a lot of weight on my shoulders. It's almost a responsibility now. Exactly. You know, people want to see, they're excited. They've watched my prep for the meet and they're excited for, you know, my goals, which is a really cool feeling. And that's why it kind of sneaks up on you that there's that huge pressure attached to it. And, you know, I was even to the point I was debating, I kind of sit between two weight classes. And it was honestly at the point where I was like, well, if I don't cut weight for this meet, then I'm in this weight class. And there's only 4 lifters in that weight class. So even if I come last, I'm 4th, right? And it was all this silly little details that shouldn't matter, right? But I was trying to find that way to relieve the stress of like, well, I can at least tell everyone I came 4th, even if I come dead last. Because the other class had like 20 something people, right? So there's a lot of pressure. And like, I had performed well before. So, I went home and I, you know, went to the doctors about something else. And she was listening to me breathing and she was like, you definitely have pneumonia. And I was just like, what?
Where did that come from?
Yeah. And she was like, oh, like, how long have you had this cough? Like, your lungs are like so bad. And I was like, I don't know. I feel like I've had this cough for like 2 years. And I was like, yeah, we did a chest x-ray like a while back for it. So she pulls up the files and she was like, no, I don't think so. Like the only chest x-ray was like 4 years ago. And I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. And she was just like, what? Like you've had this cough for like 4 years? I'm like, yeah, but I grew up with asthma as a kid, like always exercise induced or cold induced. So, you know, it wasn't weird for me to have trouble with my lungs, especially with winter months. And so, yeah, we got an x-ray and it was a really big turning point because hearing someone tell me I had pneumonia was like the biggest relief, which it really shouldn't be. But I was relieved because now I didn't have to do provincials. And now I had a real reason instead of just saying that I didn't want to do it. Okay. I was able to tell everyone like, oh, I have pneumonia, I'm not competing, right? And it was a really comfortable story. But meanwhile, like I'm coughing up my lungs, like that shouldn't feel good, right? So,
Wow.
yeah, it was a really big like turning point emotionally. And it was something that I, definitely dealt with on the low key, right? Because on the outside, it was just like, oh, yeah, not doing it because I have pneumonia. Like, didn't have time to get a medical by so that I could still go to nationals. So I decided I wasn't doing nationals. And, I kept getting tests done. And because I had a history of asthma, it was really hard to shake the pneumonia. And then finally, we did a chest x-ray, I think in January. And she's like, okay, the pneumonia's gone, but my lungs were still really gross. And I was like, okay, sure, maybe my x-ray says it's gone, but like my lungs are bad. And that's when I started like really experiencing the other symptoms of burnout at the same time. Like I was just so exhausted. I didn't have a personality anymore. Like I felt irritated by everything. If somebody did something that I wouldn't have done, I was like, wow, what a stupid decision. When you're just like so why would you do that?
Yeah, I get it.
I was so on edge. And it just felt like that's who I had become, which is like a really uncomfortable feeling. I'm normally such a positive person, and it just felt like everything was shifting. And as you mentioned, like the post I did, I shared, like I started getting rashes on my face that I couldn't explain, that would kind of come out of nowhere. And they were like huge and so bothered. Then I started having hair loss, like simple machines at the gym were leaving like really big marks on my skin.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot. And it was really hard to get answers, right? Because went to the doctor and like my pneumonia was gone. We tested for a few other things, but I really just wasn't getting answers. So then I spent like honestly 2 years working with some different like specialists in like a natural approach, which was really big for me. I did like intolerance tests to figure out which foods I was insensitive to. And it's where our bodies are really interesting, is we like to think that things just like happen, you just get pneumonia, but there's always an underlying aspect. And a lot of the things that was happening to my body, the underlying aspect was stress. And so I started dealing with that, and it took a really long time. Like I remember when we were at that world championship, right? It was a super cool moment. We were meeting those Japanese fans, they were taking photos with us. And I was just like at such a low point. I didn't feel like myself, and it was scary, right? Like you get to know yourself, you like yourself, and then you're like, where did that person go, right?
It's
like I was
crazy because on Instagram, on the social, like on the face, it looks like you're just crushing it everywhere.
Totally.
But you have to be alone and comfortable with yourself and have these thoughts and be experiencing all this.
Yeah.
And like probably one of the darkest moments of your life.
And it becomes conflicting because there's one aspect like now that I share about it more, right? But at the time you're like, well, I have this responsibility to like inspire and be that positive people, because a lot of people are going through a dark time, and I had positioned myself as someone that can be that positive spot for them, right? So it is hard when you're dealing with this all like behind the scenes, and even in terms of like just your body. Like I started having gut health issues to the point like everywhere we traveled, I would bloat. Like not just like a little bloat, like I would eat one thing and like look 6 months pregnant and it would hurt, right? So then all of a sudden like you can't get work done because you're actually just in pain. Like I remember I would spend sometimes just like 2 hours laying down because I couldn't do anything, right? So I took a long time to fix. And I think we just have this huge like hustle mindset, right? Like when you ask like, how did I do that stuff? It's like, in a way, I just did it because I was young, but I also didn't really do it because after I had to spend 2 years fixing it, right? And I think that's what we need to acknowledge is like, you could say I did all that, but it also didn't totally work out, right? But on the surface level, it looks like it worked out because, you know, I got some records in powerlifting. I built that business. I worked for myself. But at the same time, it was 2 years of like stepping back from my work to really work on that.
It really all boiled down to stress.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
They like you see stress in everything we do in our Western culture and society. From the minute we wake up, we check our phone and we see our email, and then you get in a car and you're stuck in traffic and you're thinking about all these meetings and all these things you gotta do and all these things you gotta get done. And maybe in a day you might get 5 minutes if you're lucky to kind of like even think about what is all this? What am I doing? Yeah. So I think it's really powerful that you share that story.
Thank you.
And you're so candid about it, and like it's empowering because like you're doing something that I think is the future of social media, which is where you're comfortable enough sharing your truth and your story with people.
Yeah.
And I think more people are actually going to relate and be like, oh my God, this happened to me. Something similar. Might not be as extreme or as, like exactly the same.
Not, yeah.
But it, like, people go through things and they don't share them. And I think that's going to change.
Totally.
I think in the future, people are going to become... You're going to have to, because we can't just all keep this facade.
Yeah.
The more connected and the more open we get, this is why I love podcasting, is we can just have these conversations, right? But I think in the future, it's just going to be where, like, just share your truth and just be yourself and just talk about what happened and how you're feeling. It's almost like therapeutic in a weird way. Like, you talking to people about that and someone sharing something, they might even give you a tip, like, hey, when I'm this... I get this, this is how I deal with stress, or start doing yoga or meditation. Now I want to talk to you, like, what were some of the things you did start doing to now reverse some of that burnout?
Yeah, it's funny. So, like, I feel like we hear these things, especially when we're young and we're very, like, Gary Vee mentality, that just sounds like silly and like woo woo, but then a lot of that stuff is like what makes the difference, right? So like meditation is a huge hot topic right now, but I think the way, like you said, we wake up, we check our phones, like we're on all the time, that meditation is like more important than it ever has been, because a lot of us can't sit for 5 or 10 minutes and not think about things or not touch things or open our eyes, right? So that's been something I've definitely implemented, because it was really hard when I first started. Like, I remember setting a timer and just the whole time in my head, I'm like, how is my phone not beeping yet? Like, waiting for the timer. You're like, it feels like forever, but it's been like 2 minutes, Wow. And now I feel like I could sit there all day if I wanted to, right? So I think like actually being able to clear my head was a really big one. I always talk about non-negotiables. So like, when you're building something, it's so easy to put things aside, whether it's, seeing your family, seeing your friends, doing your workouts for a lot of people, eating healthy, but you have to realize what your non-negotiables are and keep those in. So I always use like the Super Mario analogy, you have to like get the mushroom to get another life.
There you go.
Yeah, it's like something gives you energy, right? Like, you don't just start the Super Mario game and you may have 5 lives or you have 10. Like, you're doing things that give you those, right? So it's the same thing in life. Like, we have to think of those things as something that gives us energy, and energy is not something we just like have or don't have. So that was a really big thing, is like knowing that no matter how your day is going, you need to stop and you need to do that 30-minute workout, because it's going to actually make your afternoon more productive, right? Or going and seeing your family on the weekend, even though there's still work to do, because that's going to make next week even more productive, and it's going to make you stay sane through all of it. So I think really identifying like what your non-negotiables are, and then like learning to say no to a lot, right? Even if it's opportunities, sometimes we have to say no to opportunities because it allows us to keep that balance or keep that harmony, or even just work on the one thing that we need to build, right?
In like a society where like we have all those distractions and all these things pulling for our attention at all times, how do you sit down and identify what your non-negotiables are to you, if you might not even know? You're just going about your day every day, just trying to get life done. How do you do that? Where do you start? Where does someone start?
I think it's those things that you often, like, I'll use the gym as an example, right? People will like skip their workout for like, I've done it too, right? You have a lot going on with work, so you keep skipping it, and all of a sudden you've skipped it 6 days, and on day 7 you go, and after you're like, God, I needed that, right? I really needed that. Why have I been putting that off? Or like when you don't want to go to the gym because you're tired and you go and you're like, I actually feel great now. So it's finding those things, right? And I tell people, like, for me, it's usually like saying no to a social thing on a Friday night for a long time was like a really big win for me, right? Because you feel that pressure to go. But for me, it was actually like make the next day more draining. But for other people, they might go out on a Friday night and be like, man, I really needed that. Yeah, that's right?
True. That's true.
So whatever makes you feel that way of like, damn, I wish I did this more often, or like, wow, I feel so much better after that, It can be anything. It can be like showering more often. If you always feel really good after a shower, like you better start every day with a shower, right? That's true. So whatever makes you feel that way. Yeah.
I'm a weirdo. Since I was a kid,
yeah,
I can't start my day without a shower.
Really,
It's just like, I just need it. That's my non-negotiable. Yeah. There you go. I got one.
There you go. That's what I mean. It's a lot easier than we think to figure out what it is.
That's
right?
true. That's true. It's just looking inside and just knowing, just being real with yourself.
Exactly.
I like that a lot. So you overcame this and you're a lot more mindful now. And what are some other practical strategies that you've implemented to deal with stress and not let you like get back into that?
Yeah. So the 80-20 rule, I think, is a big one. So, right, like 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. And looking at that with everything you do in life, whether it's your relationships, your social life, your business, your goals, that's been really helpful. So cutting out a lot of the stuff that you don't have to do.
Yeah.
And another 80 rule would be like the 80% rule. So like, as long as things are 80%, they're good enough, because I'm definitely like a type A perfectionist, like A+ student. And I experienced a lot of that where I would do everything myself because no one's going to do it the way that I will. Right.
I hate that I'm this way.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a really big learning curve for me, was like, even if someone else can do it to 80%, that's actually good enough because of the sanity. It will save you the time, the energy, and the fact that nobody else besides you notices the 20% difference. So that has been a really big thing, is like letting go of things. Even if you are still doing things yourself, like stop taking the time to be a huge perfectionist and just recognizing like, okay, this actually is good. Like this email's done, this PDF, whatever you might be working on, like stop obsessing a little further. And just really focusing on like with that 80-20 rule, like, there's another concept, a book that we've read called The One Thing that's really great.
Great one.
Yeah, exactly. So that really helps us think like, what is the one thing I can do today that makes everything else unnecessary or easier? That's been huge because it kind of calls you out for doing all the little tasks that are easy. And if you start your day with that one thing, if for some reason you get to 2:00 and you're exhausted and you need a nap, like you can take that nap because you've done the one thing. Whereas if you fill your day with all these little tiny
busy
things,
tasks, all these things that make you look like you're super productive, but you're actually not getting the thing that you need to get done.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what stresses us out, is it feels good to check off 20 things on paper, but then at the end of the night, you're actually just still as stressed because you know you haven't done that one thing. You haven't done something that's going to take you to the next level. So I think really focusing energy has been big. I
love that. And to add to that, maybe one more thing that's practical that I found has helped me is like determining what's urgent versus important. And it kind of ties in with the same theme, but you know, like everything's urgent at all times to everyone. Everyone, every text, every email, everything you get is like, hey, I need your attention right now. And give it to me. Or like, why'd you leave me on red? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's this weird,
set
like,
new expectations.
Exactly. So, but as soon as you can start realizing what's important, which is more like what's going to help me in the long term achieve my strategic vision or my vision for me, what's really important to me, then you can start filtering out the bullshit. Like, hey, got all these texts. Great. Thanks, guys. I love you too. But can't respond to them right now. So, but I'm going to get to it when I get to it. But I'm just not, it's not important.
And I think it's a great point, and it redefines expectations, right? I'm like very much like, I love to be that friend that like, no matter what time you text me, like I'm there for you if you need me. And I don't really know where that comes from, but I've had to learn to like step away from that, because you can see it as a good thing, but it's actually harmful to yourself, right? It's great for your friends, but then when you set that expectation, the one time you're not answering right away, they're going to be like, what has happened to you? Like,
it's like this weird dependency.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so really managing that. And even with projects or deadlines, right? Like I totally love like, you know, over delivering, right? So I'm the classic, like if someone's like, can you do this by tonight? I'll be like, yes, just to prove that I can, right? Because it feels good to me. It's not totally about them. But then to say, you know what, no, I can actually get this to you by next Thursday is like a really great tool to start adjusting those expectations, because we think like they really need it. And you're also, you know, playing into their urgency that might actually not be urgent. And then, you know, I've had a few experiences lately where somebody's asked me to do something like that, and then I say no and I give them another timeline, and you know, it's like a Friday, they're like, can you do this by tonight? I'm like, no, but how's tomorrow? And they're like, yeah, well, that's fine. Actually, we're probably not going to touch it till Monday, so Monday's fine. And I'm like, wow, I would have busted my ass to do that Friday, and 2 seconds later, Monday's fine, right?
It's respecting your own time as well.
Exactly.
And so are you like doing stuff like scheduling time where you're doing nothing, or like Are you big on that? Like, this is something I really need to work on. I suck at this. But it's like actually blocking off times or days where it's like, hey, no, nothing.
Yeah, I definitely do that. Like often on Sundays or Saturdays, I'll take time to just like make myself do nothing. Or, you can still do certain things. Like I'll meal prep because it feels productive, but it's also going to set me up for success for the week. Or reading a book, because I find that really helps you to slow down and start to crave those quieter moments too.
Yeah.
But I'm really big now too on, scheduling in my fitness. If there's a yoga class I want to go to, like I feel like we'll often book our schedule, and then if there's time to do a class or go to the gym, then we do that. But now I've started to be a lot more present of like, sure, there's a class at 12 and 4:30 and somebody wants to meet at 12 and I'm like, oh, I guess I'll do the 4:30 one, but I kind of wanted to do the 12 one. And so now I'm like, no, sorry, I have something at 12. How's 1:30? And they say it's fine, right?
Powerful.
Yeah, so it's just actually deciding if they are your non-negotiables, or, time to just chill should be a non-negotiable.
Right.
Prioritizing it the same way you prioritize other things.
Recharge your battery. Keep
Exactly.
yourself good for the next day. I love it. That's fantastic. Let's get back to the businesses that you're running right now, and let's talk about what's the future of them. What's going on? What do you hope to achieve this year, and like what's the vision?
Yeah, so with my MalMadeMeDoit stuff, I've had a lot of requests for help with new entrepreneurs, and I'm obviously really passionate about one, like marketing, because that's always been my background and how we grew our brand. And then two, helping people build without that burnout. So the same way I do with my fitness program, I'm now showing people from a business perspective how you can do it, and how, these questions that you say, like, how do you get all this done and then still have time for yourself? So my big thing for 2020 is I'm really helping business owners with that. I have a group that I'm running seasonally. So I have one starting in January. And the group setting has been really cool. I have one right now. And, a lot of it is just getting in touch with people who are in that same phase. So everyone in the group is, at the same phase of their business where they've started it, but they're intimidated by marketing. They don't feel they have a strategy, and everything's very new to them, right? So I have that with a group setting, and then I'm doing some one-on-one coaching as well. And my goal for next year is to turn a lot of that into some online material that people can do at their own pace whenever they're ready. But I'm just really diving in on helping people build without burnout, especially with businesses, because I think we need to start having a different conversation around it, right? Don't get me wrong, like Gary Vee is a hustler, and I know like with wine libraries, he, really did hustle, but it's also now you look at him and he's got a team of how many people, even just for his vlog, he's got a team of how many people,
He's
right?
got a guy who follows him around with a camera, and it's just like a content machine. And he's just like telling everybody, yo, do this.
Yes.
It's like, but I don't have a team.
Yeah.
Yo, give me a team, bro.
And that's the thing. Like, I don't mean to discount his advice, because I think it has a time and a place.
It's definitely valid to a certain degree, but take it with a grain of salt. Right?
Exactly. Or remember that he has a team, because then we see, okay, well, Gary has a daily vlog, and then he makes Instagram videos out of that content, and then he makes graphics. So somebody turns around and starts doing that all themselves. Mm-hmm. And that's where we start to run into problems, right? Like, he has some really great ideas, but you also have to acknowledge what point you're at. And like I said, see that like he's not doing all those things all at once by himself. So he's not telling you to necessarily do that. We just get so hyped up and start doing it all.
Yeah.
And then it's too late.
I love it. This is fantastic. And then let's also talk about with LVD Fitness. Mm-hmm. What's going on with that? What's the next steps?
Yeah, so we I didn't mention this, but we also have a media side of our business just within the powerlifting niche. We were taking photos at meets anyways. So we're still running our media side where we offer like photography and video for powerlifters. But on the apparel side, we've actually paused production as of this summer. And it's something we've been talking pretty openly about in terms of sustainability and with climate change. There's a lot of bad stuff happening right now, and a lot of people need to take responsibility. I would say all of us need to play into it a bit. So for us, with the clean water aspect, we didn't want to have a business where we're, conducting positive change by providing clean water and then contributing to a fast fashion crisis, right?
Mm-hmm. Because it takes up a lot of water to make
exactly, yeah,
clothing and stuff like that. Is there a way around that?
There is. So there's some really great companies, like Girlfriend Collective is a great example. They make like leggings and sports bras out of recycled bottles.
Okay.
So they like break them down, right? And so there's lots of great options. So, you know, one route is we could go that way, which is...
That doesn't sound comfortable at all.
It's kind of confusing because when you get it, you would never know.
You wouldn't know. It's just like any old...
Yeah, it would be like if you were wearing like Nike or Lululemon or something.
Okay. That's cool then.
Yeah.
I just thought about it. I'm like, wait, this is cool, but wait, like, is it like a hard plastic?
No. Like, you would never know unless you read it. Man. Yeah, and that's the cool thing, right?
Uncomfortable bra to be wearing.
Just crackling as you walk.
Just like, all right, Girlfriend Collective.
No, yeah, like if anyone checks them out, like you would not know from looking at it, which is cool.
That's cool.
I think Under Armour or Adidas is doing a similar thing where they're only using recycled plastic going forward. Yeah, so there's ways businesses can shift, and for us, that's something that would be like a huge undertaking right now, right? So what we've done in the meantime is just press pause to kind of acknowledge that and, you know, to push people towards those companies that are more sustainable options.
That's really cool.
Yeah, to encourage people, you know, have a more limited wardrobe, like invest in some good pieces, but then don't keep buying. Like Forever 21 going bankrupt is probably one of the best things that could happen right now, right? Because we need a lot of those companies like to stop producing at the rates that they are. So that's just something where it doesn't totally align with us and where we're at. And it's something, you know, at the time we didn't think about, right? But now as issues are changing and, you know, it's coming to light a lot more, it's something where we want to make sure we're not having a negative impact when we're trying to have an positive impact.
Where does Lululemon fit into this? Because you are a Lululemon ambassador?
Yeah. So that's really cool. It started just this May. I started formally as an ambassador for them. It's a really great company that's, you know, trying to tackle a lot of these issues too, which is cool.
Yeah.
And they're someone that just, you know, saw what I was doing and the message I was spreading, and them taking me on as an ambassador is, you know, them saying that they see it and they want to support it, which I think is really big. So I'm going to be doing some events with them.
That's awesome. All
around burnout and helping people, you know, do some personal development. But they've just been a really great partner. They're super supportive. And, yeah, they've just helped me from a lot of angles. So it's been cool working with them. And, you know, they're growing too, right? They just started a sustainability team, right? So I think it's cool. I
love their clothes.
Yeah, it's cool to work with people that are, you know, also always learning and growing. It's cool when there's people at the forefront of it, but I also think it's especially neat to see companies like that say like, oh shit, we should do something about this, right? And I think it's really powerful to see companies like that doing it.
That's great. And it's a Canadian company too, and you know, you're all about kind of supporting things that are local and around the area. Totally. You've done some really cool things, like you've spoken at events like the Shopify Summit, GEM Conference, Social School. I'm just listing this off because it's badass. Legacy Conference, Local Talks, Women's Strength Summit, International Women's Day. Like, you're a hustler still. Say, like, people can say what they want. You're a healthy hustler. You're out here like talking and you're really open about your story and, you know, talking about how you've built these businesses and whatnot. Like, I really like salute your hustle. Like,
Thank you.
I feel lazy. I feel like I gotta work like 50,000 times harder.
Yeah.
Talk to me about like some of your favorite speaking engagements or things that you've done, something that really stuck with you.
Well, okay, this wouldn't be a speaking one, but one of the things, like when you mentioned doing all those speaking gigs and sharing my story, I always find like the Instagram DMs are what hits me in the feels. Like I have people who have told me they've like moved cities and changed jobs because I inspired them to do so. Yeah, which is crazy because like I don't even talk about doing that, right?
It's crazy
but
to
that's
have
just
that
like,
kind of impact on someone's life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, like it even feels weird to say like I don't feel like I should take responsibility for that, but they've put that out to me, you know? So getting messages like that, even when someone says I really needed this today, like to me, that's like, okay, my job for the day is done. So that's what really pushes me to keep sharing my story, because like those burnout photos you're talking about, like they're not attractive photos. Like you can tell even in it that like I obviously was not thinking about smiling because I was not feeling good, right? But to share that, like,
that takes a lot of strength, man. Yeah,
see, it's funny people say that, but for me, like I just think, well, one, it's 2 years later, so I think it makes it a lot easier, but yeah, I just feel almost like I have to, right? Like, yeah, a lot of people were like, oh, it's so brave of you to share this. And it's just funny because it doesn't feel that way. It just feels like almost wrong to not say something, to, you know, give someone like you a heads up that like,
But
this can actually happen.
But that's what's brave.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It might not feel that way
yeah.
to you, but like to a lot of people wouldn't be able to do that. So that's
Right.
where it comes in.
Yeah.
You're just too humble to admit it. Wow, fantastic. I've really loved this podcast so far. Is there anything I really didn't cover that you really do want to bring up to the spotlight? I've got a few more questions for you, but is there any...
No, I like where this has been going so far. Yeah.
Awesome. Love it. No, it's been great having you here, Lynn. Like, I feel like we could talk for hours, but it's already been an hour, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah.
One thing that you talked about that I like really stuck with me is that once you no longer could do the powerlifting, or like you had to put that on break, the identity. We, like, as humans, when we identify with something that we do, and a community and like a bond, you kind of make that your idea of who you are and what you're projecting to the world. So when that changed for you, that must have been like all the physical, all that stuff aside, all the social media, everything aside, like for you, the identity, like that must have been really tough, because I've gone through something similar because I played football my whole life, and then when I got injured and I could no longer play and go to the next level and continue playing something that I was passionate about and I love, and this is like everything to me, I kind of had like a little bit of a crisis, like, fuck, who am I then? Like what value do I bring to the world and whatnot? So how do you like deal with that?
I think well, obviously, I think for most people, like going through something like that is like the easiest, hardest way to learn. But I think it's how we identify, right? Like a lot of the conversation I had around there was telling people, you know, you're not a powerlifter. You're someone who powerlifts. You know, you weren't a football player. You were someone who plays football. Yep. And it sounds so small, but it is a really big difference. It's the same way, like, we've changed the conversation. Like, we don't say autistic children anymore. We say children with autism because their autism doesn't define them.
Love it.
Yeah, it's the same thing, right? We need to speak that way more often, I think. Yeah. And I think we're just taught all the way along to feel like we have an answer. And I think those little identifiers make us feel like we have an answer, right? What are you doing? Oh, I'm a student, right? People love the 4 years of university because their answer can be that they're a student and they're studying X. That's
so true.
Yeah, it feels like an answer, right?
Yeah. Why do we want to compartmentalize and make things so neat and like, I am this, I'm a firefighter, I am a...
Totally.
Why is that? I wonder why that is. Man.
Yeah, it's like built into us. And I think it's really interesting because especially when you start working for yourself, you get to this point where you just stop doing it, right? Because you said, like, I wear so many hats. I don't even think about it. Like, sometimes I'm filling out a form. It's like title. I'm like, no, I don't know.
What is that?
Like every form probably says something different. I'll be like, marketing director, CEO, like, I don't know, president, whatever. So I think it's like learning. And also it takes a lot of self-reflection, right? Because you have to say, like, who am I no matter what else happens? Like, if I get a job tomorrow, that's the other thing, right? I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm someone who owns a business or runs a business. Because if I get a job tomorrow, I will be the same person. Whereas some people might be at a point where if they get a job tomorrow, it will crush them because they are an entrepreneur and that's all that they are in their mind, you know? Wow. So same thing with sports. I think we see it a lot in sports with injuries, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's very important to think about those questions. Ask, like, what's important to you? Think about yourself outside of it, right? Like with your family, I think it makes you a better person too, right? Like you care more about your relationships. Like we hang out with our family all the time. Like we go to dinner with my parents probably more than we go to dinner with my friends. And I'm not embarrassed to say that because to me, I've prioritized it. I have older parents being the youngest of three, right? Yeah. So I think it's deciding, like, you know, be that good sister, be the good mom, whatever you might be a good partner to your significant other, and be really cool with who you are no matter what happens. Because those things aren't who we are. It's just something we do. And I think we really get forced to identify that way, and just stepping back and saying, I'm not going to identify that way is really big.
I love that. I've recently started changing how I view emotions and stuff that way as well, because it doesn't just apply to your identity, but it's like you are not angry. You are experiencing anger.
Totally.
Just rewiring that a little bit, it makes so much of a difference.
So huge. Even like when I started dealing with a lot of this gut health stuff, it was really eye-opening to me because, you know, you would say like, I just don't have energy today. It's like, well, that's actually not true. You have to do something to give you energy. Or like there was a lot of things about my body, you know, I'm classic, like I have asthma, I have eczema, like I just have like the shitty loser genes basically. And I accepted a lot of things about my body. And then when I started doing a lot of these natural changes, I started to realize that I actually had some control over it. You know, I had nightmares for a really long time. And then when I changed my diet, the nightmares stopped. And that was a pretty crazy connection for me, because I could tell that was what it was, because then, you know, I would cheat on my new nutrition a little bit and have, say, like dairy or gluten, and then I would have a wicked nightmare that night. So it's something where we think we're not really in control of, but
we actually have more than
when you start to shift your perspective and say, okay, I'm having nightmares, what do I need to address in my life, in my nutrition, in my habits that could be causing that? And then it's like really crazy when you think of all the things you could start to achieve, because obviously we set those limitations on our thoughts, right? Like a lot of people think I'm not smart enough for that. I'm not creative enough. Everyone always tells me like, oh, I could never be an entrepreneur.
Imposter syndrome sets in too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love it. This is great. I'm going to ask you one more question before I get to our lightning round.
Okay.
It's kind of open-ended, so.
Okay.
But what's next for Mal? What's next? I mean, you've done all these cool things, but I know you have a million things cooking up here that you want to do. But what's next?
Yeah, so my next big thing is definitely helping entrepreneurs create businesses that they can feel good about, making money with. I think people have a lot of weird triggers around money. So the next year, I'm definitely going to be talking a lot more about that.
Right.
Helping entrepreneurs build that business without burning out. And then after that, just helping people grow without burning out, whatever that looks like for them.
I love it. Spreading smiles, as you like to say.
Exactly.
You do a great job at that.
Thank you. Let's
start our lightning round before I let you go. It's just 5 questions, and you don't have to answer like in one word or something.
Yeah,
I suck
not good at that.
I suck at coming up with them, so don't worry. They're really not that deep. Except this first one kind of is. Okay. What advice would you give a 17-year-old you?
Oh, wow. My first answer was like, be nicer to your mom. Like, I feel like I've always
that's what it is.
Yeah, like, I've always had a good relationship with my mom, but when you're young, like I definitely in high school, like knew everything.
That teenage angst.
Yeah. And just like, why can't I do this? And then now I'm like, oh, that probably was an unreasonable request.
What's one thing not too many people know about you that might surprise people?
I think
you're a pretty open book, so
I think for a lot of people it would be like my sarcastic humor, which depending on how you know me is not surprising, but that's something that I've started to do a bit more, even just like in Instagram stories, because a lot of my posts are like very like inspirational. Like I remember going to one of those speaking events and the girl picked me up and she told me like halfway through the night, she's like, I'm just so relieved because like thought you were just like really nice, but I thought you were just one of those people, you know, that's just like a nice person. And like she's like, you're actually just so funny and you have like a very sick twisted humor. And she's like, it just makes me so happy because I thought she thought she'd be like walking on eggshells. I am very sarcastic.
No, that's great.
Yeah,
that's funny. That's a great answer. Your favorite coffee shop in Ottawa?
Ooh,
I know you don't drink coffee, but
no, but I work at
shops,
I think headquarters. Yeah,
cool.
it's like
cool
a good vibe, and also just like the table space. Like some places you go and you can't put like you're like working on your lap or there's no room for a notebook. So
that's really important. If anyone's opening up a coffee shop, man, in 2019, think about this, man.
Come on.
Don't give me like a little stool with like the circular
and
thing.
like good Wi-Fi.
Oh,
also, they'll put your order on a tab, so like if you're working you can just like get a coffee and then order food. It's like more convenient.
I like that.
And you get haircut inspiration because you're just watching people get their haircut through the glass wall.
That's super cool. I like the different vibe there. Co-working space or quiet private office?
I think quiet private office. I really like collaboration, but I also am like easily distracted in those settings. So I find my best work is by myself. But
that's interesting. Going into this, when I wrote this down, I was thinking like almost for sure you're gonna say
really?
co-working space. So that's cool.
Yeah, no, I'm like a work at home. I like go out to those spaces to not go crazy. Like Friday I worked from a coffee shop because I'd worked from home like 8 hours every day of the week.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
That's cool. Last question. What's one thing you think everybody could start doing today to get better at practicing mindfulness? And you already kind of gave some really good ones, but when I wrote this down, I didn't know you had that kind of ammo just ready to go. So,
okay, I have two. I'm cheating. One is to actually prioritize sleep because I read The Sleep Revolution by Arianna Huffington.
Okay.
She made the Huffington Post. She actually broke her cheekbone because she fell over from being so tired, from being overworked. So she has a crazy interesting story, but she talks a lot of the science of sleep. And it's a really great book if you justify staying up late and getting up early.
oh, people glorify it.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like, yeah, bro, only need 4 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
Don't need it.
No.
Like,
And then you read the book and you're like, wow, you would be so much better at your job if you slept 8 hours.
I think there's a sleep doctor specialist, Matthew Walker or something like
Okay.
that. He was on the Joe Rogan podcast and it blew my mind. Him talking about it, just like he's like, it's the best performance enhancing drug on the planet.
It's crazy.
Sleep.
It's like the best kept secret. Like people could make fun of me all day if they want for like when I go to bed, and I just feel like whatever, I've got the secret, you know?
I'm trying to get there with you because that's a work in progress for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's the main one. And then second is just like that self-awareness we talked about, right? Like start picking up on things that you do and start asking yourself how you can change them, right? Like if you are one that lashes out at your significant other, like this is something Josh and I were just lucky from day one we had, where like we communicate very well, so we rarely get mad at each other. And if we do, within like 2 minutes, one of us is like, okay, I'm actually stressed about X.
Yeah.
I'm not upset with you. And that's what it was. And
Powerful, man.
yeah, just catching yourself in those moments. I think like recognize where you're shooting yourself in the foot. And
Yeah, because sometimes you're just projecting it onto the next person. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Mal, this has been amazing.
It's been super fun.
I really love this podcast. Where can people find you? How could they, get on board with the things that you're up to? Tell everyone.
Yeah, so my name's Mallory Rowan, and my Instagram is Mallory Rowan, and my website's Mallory Rowan, so I keep it really easy.
Awesome. Love it.
And my DMs are always open on Instagram, probably the best way to hit me up if you have a question.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today, and just remember, it's not that deep. Thanks. I hope you enjoyed that episode with Mallory as much as I did. I got a ton of value from it, and I hope you did as well. If you enjoy this kind of content, please subscribe, leave a rating, or contribute to my Patreon page. And don't forget to share. Remember, it's not that deep.